I can only come to the UK safely if I'm invited. And, you know, there is a lot of control and ability in my father's hands. Ultimately, this whole thing could be resolved through him, not necessarily by intervening, but by stepping aside, allowing the experts to do what is necessary and to carry out an RMB.
Meghan was screaming at him because it was just shocking. So he went off. He had to go away. He had to.
What if I told you the man who once saved Harry and Meghan has now become the very reason their world is collapsing? A secret tape has leaked, and it's so explosive it could destroy their marriage and shake the royal family forever. Stay with me because once you hear what's on this tape, you won't believe your ears. Prince Harry is reportedly in crisis mode, shaken by a revelation no one saw coming. A leaked private recording of Meghan Markle has surfaced, and whispers suggest it could expose uncomfortable truths the couple has long kept hidden. Insiders hint the footage captures raw, unguarded exchanges between Harry and Meghan that might ignite doubts about the stability of their marriage. But what truly jolted observers was the name tied to the leak: Tyler Perry. Once the trusted confidant who sheltered the Sussexes during their royal fallout, Perry is now being accused of playing a role in this public embarrassment. If accurate, the betrayal is explosive, not only undermining Harry and Meghan's trust, but potentially dragging the royal family back into a storm they've struggled to escape. Behind palace doors, the alleged leak has reportedly sparked outrage, with concerns that the scandal could strain the monarchy's fragile ties to Harry even further. In an unexpected move, Harry quietly flew to London alone, his tense demeanor fueling speculation. Sources close to the situation say his visit wasn't just routine, it was a response to the deeply personal footage, which has now been tied directly to Perry. For many, the revelation is shocking. Perry had once been their lifeline, offering safety, privacy, and even becoming godfather to their daughter. To imagine him at the center of such a breach feels unthinkable. While the precise details of the recording remain under wraps, rumors suggest Meghan can be heard making pointed remarks that could reignite tensions, not only within her marriage but also between the Sussexes and the royal establishment. Reports claim one of Meghan's sharper comments compared her Duchess title to the most expensive leash she had ever worn. Even more cutting was her line about Harry saying that if he wanted to run back to his crown and corgis, he could, because she was done babysitting a prince without a kingdom. These remarks, never intended for public consumption, stung all the more because they surfaced during a supposedly private live stream Perry hosted. Someone recorded the session, and within hours the clip was everywhere, splashed across social media, dissected on YouTube, and amplified in British tabloids predicting the couple's downfall. Harry's reaction was immediate and unfiltered. Witnesses at LAX described him as pale, frantic on the phone, and boarding a private jet without Meghan at his side. When he landed in London, the royal reception was anything but warm. There were no official photo ops, no statements of unity, only silence. Instead of returning to Windsor or Kensington, Harry retreated to a discreet estate, a symbolic move that reflected both distance and discomfort. Insiders say King Charles took the remarks personally, viewing them less as a scandal and more as a wound to the dignity of the family. Prince William's response was even more cutting, reportedly remarking, "Let him lie in it," signaling a cold and final withdrawal of support. For Harry, the journey back to London may not only be about repairing fractured royal ties, it could also mark a reckoning within his own marriage. By choosing a remote residence away from the family's central homes, Harry seems to be both inviting conversations and guarding himself from rejection. Meanwhile, Meghan's silence speaks volumes. In a storm this public and personal, her decision to remain quiet has become one of the loudest statements of all. For someone who has long built her reputation on polished appearances and carefully controlled storytelling, Meghan Markle's silence speaks volumes. This isn't just the absence of a statement, it's the absence of control. Those close to the situation suggest she is deliberately allowing Harry to weather the fallout alone. To some, it looks like a test of his loyalty. To others, it feels like strategic self-preservation. Either way, the once united Sussex front now shows its first visible cracks. Rumors swirl of trial separations, quiet distance, or simply a simmering cold war between them, none confirmed. Yet all fueled by Meghan's choice to let the headlines run unchecked. The figure at the center of this storm is, astonishingly, the last person anyone would have predicted: Tyler Perry. For years, Perry was not just a Hollywood friend or passing ally, he was a lifeline. When Harry and Meghan felt most abandoned after stepping back from royal duties, it was Perry who opened his doors, offering them sanctuary in one of his most secure properties in Los Angeles. He gave them privacy when the press circled like vultures, offered them stability when the monarchy had seemingly cut them adrift, and even assumed the deeply personal role of becoming godfather to their daughter, Lilibet. His generosity symbolized something powerful, that while the royal family might have turned their backs, a new chosen family in America had embraced them. And yet, here we are. That same benefactor now stands accused of igniting the very crisis threatening to unravel Harry and Meghan's carefully constructed world. The leaked recording, which Perry allegedly let slip during what was supposed to be a private livestream, has been described by insiders as devastating. Some observers claim Perry's words and actions were deliberate, a choice born not of carelessness but conviction. His cryptic comment, "Sometimes the truth speaks for itself," was more than just an aside. It landed with the unmistakable weight of a man who had decided he no longer owed protection to the people he once sheltered. Why would Perry do this? The question has fueled an avalanche of speculation. Some believe it was an act of quiet revenge, perhaps born out of exhaustion from what they describe as Meghan's endless requests for introductions, favors, and opportunities in Hollywood. Others think it was less about malice and more about liberation, a man choosing to free himself from a relationship that had become increasingly one-sided. Then there are those who suggest Perry may have felt used, that his generosity had been taken for granted, and that this slip was a way of reclaiming power. Whatever the motive, one thing is certain: the consequences are seismic. The fallout stretches far beyond Harry and Meghan's personal reputations. For the monarchy, Perry's leak is a paradox, both vindication and disaster. On one hand, it seems to prove the point, long whispered within palace walls, that Harry's grievances were rooted less in systemic mistreatment and more in personal turmoil. Meghan's words in the recording, sharp, dismissive, even contemptuous, give ammunition to those who argued that the Sussexes' departure was driven by ego and discontent rather than injustice. On the other hand, the monarchy finds itself dragged back into the very circus it has long tried to escape. The House of Windsor thrives on control, on curated appearances, on maintaining composure in the face of chaos. Yet this leak is unedited, raw, and unsplittable. Unlike Oprah interviews or Netflix specials carefully staged and polished, this is the unscripted reality. And that reality is messier than the palace ever wanted on display. Royal commentators have noted how damaging this particular scandal feels compared to previous It isn't Harry or Meghan directly choosing to air grievances their own ally. Someone once considered part of their chosen family, revealing something never intended for public ears. That betrayal cuts deeper, and because it wasn't orchestrated, it carries a credibility that no carefully packaged media deal could match. A few unsparing words, uttered in what was believed to be a private space, have pierced through the polished veneer that both the Sussexes and the monarchy work so hard to maintain. Public sentiment, meanwhile, has shifted with startling speed. Just a few years ago, there was widespread sympathy for Harry, seen as the man who dared to escape the gilded cage of monarchy for love and independence. Meghan, too, was once framed as the outsider who bravely stood up to an outdated institution, but now, that sympathy has curdled into skepticism, even resentment. Increasingly, Harry is seen not as the brave escapee, but as a man who burned his bridges and is now watching the flames consume what little connection he has left. Meghan's silence, once interpreted as dignity, now reads to some as calculated indifference. And Perry, once their ally, has been reimagined as the disillusioned insider, finally laying bare the truth. The options before Harry are brutally limited. To stand by Meghan would likely cement his estrangement from the royal family permanently. Every word of support for her would deepen the divide with his father and brother, who reportedly see Meghan's remarks as both insulting and irreparable. Yet to distance himself publicly from her would be catastrophic. Such a move would all but confirm rumors of marital fractures and could unleash a scandal far more explosive than anything yet seen. It would not just threaten their brand as a couple, it would fracture the image of a united front that has been the foundation of their post-royal identity. And so, silence reigns. The palace, Meghan, Harrynan, have spoken. But this silence is not emptiness. It is loaded with strategy, hurt, and calculation. For Meghan, silence may be a shield, a way to avoid deepening the scandal by fueling the media firestorm. For Harry, silence is survival, a temporary holding pattern as he tries to assess where his loyalties must ultimately lie. For the monarchy, Silence is protocol, an attempt to minimize damage by refusing to dignify the remarks with a response. But silence does not stop speculation. Instead, it magnifies it. Every unspoken word becomes a canvas for rumor. Every withheld statement becomes a symbol of fracture. The longer the quiet continues, the louder the public judgment grows. And in that vacuum, Harry appears increasingly isolated. It is bitterly ironic. The man who once escaped the suffocating control of monarchy to carve out freedom now finds himself trapped once more, but this time, the bars are invisible. They are built of public opinion, fractured loyalties, and the lingering echo of a private sentence he never uttered but must now answer for. Unlike before, there is no clear villain to push back against, no institution to blame, no media machine to fight. Instead, the battle is personal, internal, and inescapable. Insiders suggest Harry's sudden trip to London, marked by tension and visible strain, was not just about facing his family but also about wrestling with his own crossroads. Does he double down on defending Meghan, even if it costs him what little goodwill remains with the Windsors? Or does he begin the painful process of distancing himself, risking the implosion of the marriage he once defended at all costs? Neither option is free of devastation, both carry permanent consequences. For the monarchy, Harry's leak may be interpreted as a vindication that Harry's departure was never about systemic cruelty but about private discontent. But for Harry, the scandal leaves him in a no-win scenario. He cannot undo the words that were said, nor can he escape the ripple effects of their release. Each decision he makes will alienate one side or the other: his wife, his family, or the public he has spent years trying to win over. The silence surrounding the scandal is deafening, but it is also temporary. At some point, Harry, Meghan, or the palace will be forced to act, to speak, to clarify. And when that moment comes, it may well define the rest of Harry's life, not just as a royal, but as a husband, a father, and a man caught between two worlds that no longer seem willing to claim him. For now, he stands at a lonely crossroads. Every path forward is fraught. Every option comes with loss. And whichever step he takes next, one thing is clear: there will be no easy way back to the life he once knew. In many ways, Harry finds himself circling back to the very point from which his journey began. Years ago, he made the radical choice to walk away from the monarchy, framing his exit as an escape from the suffocating rigidity of royal life. The gilded palace walls, while gleaming to the outside world, felt to him like bars of Acacia prison disguised as privilege. Yet, for all the freedom he fought to claim, he is now enclosed in a different kind of cell. This one is not built from centuries-old stone or bound by royal protocol, but from something far more intangible and relentless: public scrutiny, fractured loyalties, and the heavy reverberation of words he himself never spoke but must now bear the consequences of. The loneliness of his position cannot be overstated. Once surrounded by an institution that provided both structure and suffocating oversight, Harry now navigates a landscape where no one truly shelters him. The monarchy has distanced itself. The press, once adversarial, now dissects his every gesture with renewed skepticism. Even allies who once championed his narrative celebrities. Media outlets sympathetic to the Sussexes appear quieter than before, unwilling to insert themselves into a scandal that feels too messy, too personal. The safety net he once thought he had is no longer there. Every decision before him now carries immense, possibly irreversible weight. If he doubles down in defense of Meghan, he risks solidifying his estrangement from the Windsors in a way that no reconciliation effort could ever undo. King Charles, who has long balanced duty with fatherhood, may reach a point of no return. Prince William, whose patience seems to have already worn thin, might close the door forever. To stand with Meghan, as Harry has consistently done in the past, would mean choosing her fully and permanently at the cost of blood ties. But on the other hand, should he begin the painful process of detaching from his marriage, whether subtly or decisively, he invites another kind of catastrophe. The image of Harry and Meghan has been built on unity, on the strength of love against adversity. To dismantle that narrative now would not only fracture their personal relationship, but also risk unraveling the global brand they have built together. This crossroads is brutal because it is not merely about family politics or reputation management, it is about survival. Harry's identity, his sense of self, is caught in the crosshairs of competing loyalties. The monarchy demands loyalty to duty, to tradition, to the institution that shaped him. Meghan represents loyalty to love, independence, and the freedom he claimed when he left Britain. But the scandal sparked by a private remark, one never meant to reach the public, has turned loyalty into a double-edged sword. Whichever side he chooses, he bleeds. The emotional toll of this crisis is compounded by the symbolism of his journey. When Harry left the United Kingdom, he did so with the belief that distance would bring clarity, that America would provide space to heal and rebuild. Yet distance has not dissolved the shadows of monarchy, it has only stretched them across the Atlantic. The very things he sought to escape scrutiny, judgment, isolation, have followed him. Amplified by a global media landscape that thrives on every misstep, it is as though he traded one gilded cage for another, the palace for the spotlight, the courtiers for commentators, the monarchy's discipline for the unforgiving court of public opinion. And unlike before, when the monarchy's strict silence left space for his voice to dominate, Harry is now confronted with a silence that's up. Meghan remains quiet, perhaps strategically, perhaps out of necessity. The palace, too, remains silent, adhering to its time-tested rule: never complain, never explain. Even Perry, the man whose slip ignited this firestorm, has receded into vagueness, leaving his cryptic remark hanging without clarification. This silence is not benign, is deafening. It isolates Harry further, leaving him alone to shoulder the questions, the doubts, and the choices that will shape not only his future but that of his family. His struggle also reflects a broader paradox of modern celebrity intertwined with monarchy. Royals are meant to embody composure, to symbolize stability amidst chaos. Yet Harry has long rebelled against that archetype, choosing instead to embrace vulnerability, to speak of his traumas, his frustrations, his fears. That vulnerability once won him public sympathy, painting him as relatable and human in contrast to the palace's rigidity. But now, in this moment of scandal, vulnerability risks becoming weakness. His critics argue that he has overshared, overexposed, and left himself without the armor necessary to withstand the blows. What once humanized him now threatens to undermine him. Speculation about his next move runs rampant. Some insiders suggest he may attempt a delicate balancing act, issuing a statement that defends Meghan's right to her feelings while simultaneously expressing regret for the words that were spoken. Such a move might soften the backlash but would satisfy no one entirely. Others believe he may retreat into silence altogether, choosing to wait out the storm and hoping the public's attention shifts to another scandal. But silence, as he is learning, is rarely neutral. It is interpreted, dissected, and weaponized. The longer he remains quiet, the more people assume fracture, weakness, or avoidance. There is also the possibility of reconciliation attempts behind closed doors. Perhaps Harry's sudden quiet return to London was less about confrontation and more about negotiation, seeking a path back into the fold without entirely abandoning the independence he carved out. But insiders caution that the palace is not the same as it was when he first left. King Charles now bears the weight of kingship, and William is increasingly seen as the steady future of the monarchy. Their tolerance for chaos may be lower than ever, their willingness to extend olive branches diminished by repeated storms. At the heart of it all is the question of identity. Who is Harry if not the prince who left, the husband who defended his wife, the man who exposed his pain? If his marriage falters, if his distance from the monarchy becomes permanent, what role is left for him to inhabit? The existential weight of that question compounds the practical dilemmas before him. It is not simply about choosing between family and marriage, it is about defining himself in a world where his titles mean less, his allies are fewer, and his words carry consequences that reverberate globally. For the public, this saga has become more than gossip. It has become a mirror of modern tensions. It highlights the fragility of image in an age of constant surveillance, the difficulty of navigating loyalty in a fractured world, and the enduring fascination with royalty even when those royals reject the crown. Harry's plight is compelling, because it is both extraordinary and deeply human, a man torn between love and duty, identity and belonging, silence and truth. And so he stands, at a crossroads that feels both inevitable and cruel. Each step forward is a gamble, and the stakes could not be higher. One path risks permanent exile from his family, sealing him as an outsider for the rest of his days. The other risks shattering the relationship he once risked everything to protect, leaving him adrift in a world that may no longer see him as husband, prince, or only as a man caught in the wreckage of choices made and bridges burned. In this moment, Harry's struggle transcends the headlines. It is no longer about royalty, reputation, or even marriage alone. It is about survival navigating a labyrinth of silence, loyalty, and betrayal in a world where every move is magnified, and every misstep could define him forever. The gilded cage he once fled has given way to an invisible one, and the question remains: does Harry have the strength, the clarity, and the resilience to finally break free? Or has his escape simply led him into another prison, one without walls but with no exit?